Thank you for joining. We'll be beginning shortly. Good morning, good evening. My name is Claudio Querol, and I'm the CEO of Axus, a company dedicated to digital transformation and cybersecurity. I am very pleased that you can join us in this event sponsored by Triple Jump. This is cybersecurity in COVID-19 times. Just a quick intro on who we are and what we do. At Axis, we focus on the principle of value creation. We, as a Triple Jump, understand that technology change needed for success is not only based on technology itself, but also on the transformation of processes, the way things are done, that is, and mainly really on people. Our focus is consultative. We always start by understanding the reality and technical and business needs of our customers. And through that, we engage in three lines of businesses where we've worked actually very closely with Triple Jump, mainly in Latin America so far. But we've also done clearly some work in other emerging economies. The first line of business is digital transformation, where we define the roadmap that determines what the processes of greatest impact technology solutions that need to be implemented, and the cultural changes that need to happen for a successful digital transformation of a business, of a company, or even of a country or a public sector, or socioeconomic development is sought after, rather. Cybersecurity, which is what brings us here today, is where we work to strengthen the cybersecurity posture of organizations and people, prioritizing mitigation and, of course, strengthening initiatives that generate the greatest impact on reducing cyber risk. And we'll talk more about this in a second. And finally, learning, which is also why we're here today. We seek to strengthen the digital capacities and capabilities of employees, of organizations in general, looking to enhance the effectiveness and the impact of their work with digitalization and an increasingly digitized world. These are some of our certifications that relevant to digital transformation and cybersecurity conversation. And this is me. I will be your speaker today, this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you are around the globe, because we've got people from lots of different places. I've been, I'm the CEO and managing director of Axus, and I have over 20 years of experience leading and implementing digital transformation, innovation, and cybersecurity projects around the world in multiple industries, including, of course, financial services in both banking and microfinance. Prior to founding Axus, I was managing director for Cisco's advisory practice in Latin America, and I spent some time also in the Middle East and North Africa, working both for Cisco and as a consultant at McKinsey, a senior consultant at McKinsey and Company. I have an MBA from the MIT Sloan School of Management and post-grad studies in applied cybersecurity, also from MIT, and I'm a electrical engineer by training. So thank you again to Triple Jump and Juan Luis Podesta, who's here with us today, for the invitation to present to you today. As you know, we're going to talk about cybersecurity, particularly cybersecurity in the context of the world in COVID-19 times, and then this now famous new normal that is already emerging. In the next hour or so, we'll cover topics in cybersecurity threats, as well as best practices to mitigate these threats in remote work environments, and within our own customers and our own customer base in interactions with us, in their interactions with us and with our systems. So let's begin by talking about the new cybersecurity threats. We have a chat and a Q&A window. If you have any questions, please submit your questions. Your microphones are muted because we have a lot of people on the line. But if you have any questions, please do submit them on the chat window, and we have a space for Q&A at the end. Also, we are, for all of you who have been invited to this presentation, and those who registered and could not attend and are listening to the recording, which we'll send around when we're done, we have a window of a few days until into January where you can ask us any questions, and we'll get back to you with anything that you may have missed or where you want us to go into more detail. So again, you'll be getting the recording and the slides when we're done with this. Okay, so first item on the agenda, cybersecurity threats. But let's start by defining what we mean by cybersecurity. Well, cybersecurity is a set of, can be defined, if you look at a dictionary definition, if you will, is the set of tools, policies, methods, practices, and technologies that can be used to protect your organization's assets and your users in cyberspace. So this is what makes what puts the cyber into cybersecurity. We're talking about electronically transferred data and information. We're talking about the cyberspace. We're talking about the internet. Cybersecurity is critical. It's important because it covers all aspects regarding the protection of our sensitive data, our personally identifiable information, something that's called PII, our protected health information, PHI, our personal information, intellectual property, and so on and so forth, from, of course, theft and damage that can be attempted by criminals and adversaries in around the world, which is something that's getting more and more common as we speak. But why is it relevant? Why is cybersecurity relevant, and why is it relevant to us? Look, not only do nations and businesses face threats from the actions and dark intentions of cyber criminals, but regular people are also exposed to many of these new risks. So all of us as individuals are exposed, ever more so, to these new risks. Identity theft is a huge problem. Criminals steal personal information to sell it to the highest bidder. I mean, it's a financial games game. In a recent article by a couple of guys called Paul McGee and Rico Brandenburg from Oliver Wyman, that was published in the MIT Sloan Management Review 5 months ago, July 23rd this year. They talk about how employees are starting to return to the offices, in countries around the globe that are beginning to ease these COVID-19 induced lockdowns that we've all gone through, and for many of us are going back into. But some countries are starting to lift some of the stay-at-home orders. Now, there's still uncertainty around the pandemic, and many organizations are choosing to keep work semi-remote, virtual workplaces, in combination with going back to the office, at least for the next year or even 18 months. And sometimes even possibly for good. Facebook, as an example, is allowing employees to work from home permanently. And in fact, other companies of different sizes, I mean, Facebook is a digital huge company, but many companies, even small and micro businesses, are becoming digital by default. Organizations have rapidly shifted because of the pandemic. And we'll talk more about that now as we go into the more of the content, but they've rapidly shifted to semi-remote working arrangements. And they've been having to in an equally speedy way, implement things to mitigate the cyber risks that have been created by growing and expanding attack surfaces, which have accompanied, of course, the work from anywhere operating model. Work from home, work from a coffee shop, work from any sort of space that you may have with an internet connectivity. Now, also me and Paul Me and Brandenburg this time in Marsh McLennan's Cyber Handbook 2021, although it was released, of course, this year. We're not 2021 yet, although many of us wish we were. In this Cyber Handbook, they talk about the new cyber normal. And the new cyber normal is about the few trends that organizations and people should be aware of and keep in mind when defending or defining rather how to adjust the way things are done in order to minimize their cybersecurity risk. Number one, in this new cyber normal, there is an increasing number of cyber attacks. I mean, that is, I think, probably known to everybody, and definitely everybody on this call. I mean, so since the COVID-19 outbreak began, the number of cyber attacks has soared, and hackers have exploited a greater number of, let's face it, weakly protected backdoors into corporate systems that have been opening because of people connecting from anywhere, as well as, of course, they've been exploiting the human distraction caused by the COVID-19 related events. I just read also that the FBI, for example, the American FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, is now receiving north of 4,000 cybersecurity complaints daily, up to 1,000, and this is why it's relevant, prior to the pandemic. So it's kind of been multiplied by 4. So hackers continue to target industries such as healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, and public sector organizations like the World Health Organization, the WHO. There's a study that was conducted by VMware, a technology vendor, with 25 CISOs, chief information security officers from top financial institutions around the globe. It's called the Modern Bank Haste 3.0. You can look it up. We'll send you the links. And there it says the banks are now fending off nearly 3 times as many cyber attacks as cyber criminals are flooding employees' inboxes with COVID-19 related phishing emails, often attaching files with malware. So cyber attacks in financial institution clients have gone up by nearly 3 times. It's huge. I've actually seen that in some countries in emerging markets, these attacks have increased sixfold. So why is this happening in this new cyber normal? Me and Brandenburg also tell us about the change in attack surfaces. I mean, the shift to using new teleworking infrastructure and processes may lead to undetected exploitation of vulnerabilities in our remote work technologies. There are now a number and growing number of cyber criminals targeting individuals and organizations with malware, people that are now connecting from home or connecting from anywhere. Cyber risks, in additional of our and organizations, business partners, and third parties are increasing as well. You know, think about it. It is hard enough to prepare internally ourselves for a semi or completely remote working environment or a semi-remote working environment, but it's even harder to verify how prepared our vendors in our entire supply chain are. So changing attack surfaces, it's not just about us. It's now about the entire supply chain. Everything is getting digitized. Everything is getting connected. Third point, and really important, and I kind of alluded to this before, is the distracted workforce. A large number of cyber attacks, successful cyber attacks, are really caused by human error. There's a number of increasingly preoccupied, worried people with personal and financial stress at home. Employees are now more vulnerable to cyber threats and social engineering, and we'll address that in a second. We'll tell you what that means. But it's in essence, these are cyber attacks designed to trick people into revealing sensitive information, and this is now more easier, let me put it that way, because we are distracted, we are stressed. And this leads to a multi-stressed environment. I mean, not only we're stressed at home, but our security teams working in our organizations, in our customers and different companies around the globe are also operating in unprecedented environments. And when there are multiple crises that are constantly happening and arising, think about it, not just the stuff that we were used to dealing with before or new crises that were coming up, but now we've got the COVID-19 related challenges that are now the baseline for the foreseeable future. So the impact on the financial services industry is significant. According to the Verizon report of this year's Verizon report 2020, in the financial services industry, we've had over 1,500 incidents of data compromise with around 500 confirmed data disclosure. And this is among the large financial institutions. So this is big because it's a big jump from what we had before. It's been going up every year for the past, I don't know, 15 years or so. But now the jump this year has been even higher. Look at the threat actors here. So threat actors meaning who are driving these cyber attacks. Look at how many insider jobs we have. 35%. Yeah, granted. I mean, most of them are external actors, hackers from outside, but there's 35% of threat actors that come from inside our companies. And this is something to think about. And the motives are, of course, the main motive here is financial, 91%. There's espionage, there's grudge, but the real motivation behind this is financial. So dark, isn't it? I mean, it is, but fortunately, there are many things that we can do to minimize the risks that we're now exposed to. Let's see what we have from a perspective of organizations, particularly in the world of remote work. So when we talk about cyber attacks, what are they? What are these attacks? Where do they come from? How does an attacker gain access to my information? There are multiple attack scenarios, multiple attack vectors, attack types, if you will. We've got And if you look at this slide, we've got malware, we'll talk about that, phishing, part of social engineering, password attacks, people trying to steal our passwords in many different ways, DDoS, which is distributed denial of service, and this is when people or attackers hit our infrastructure, technical infrastructure, with multiple requests at such a high speed that essentially our systems crash. There are man-in-the-middle attacks where people put some sort of sniffing device between a sending computer, for example, and an access point, a Wi-Fi access point, essentially sniffing, sucking in all of our information. Drive-by downloads, where we download without knowing we're doing something by just visiting a website. Malvertising, rogue software, so on and so forth. I mean, there's so many of these attack vectors and scenarios that it's difficult to keep up. But who's this guy in the middle? What or who is attacking us? Well, this is how we typically think of a hacker or cyber criminal, right? But is this really so? Well, no. The truth is, the system is much more sophisticated than this. It is much more sophisticated than some guy in the hood in his basement trying to get information from us, rob information from us. Think about this. Cybercrime costs are predicted to hit 6 trillion US dollars annually by 2021. And this is followed by a record year in 2017 of $600 billion. So in 4 years, from 2017 to next year to 2021, and even this year, this is expected to, the cybercrime costs are expected to go up by a fivefold, essentially from 600 billion to 6 trillion. Tenfold, rather, sorry. The World Economic Forum in last year's 2019 cybercrime estimate puts economic losses from cybercrime at around 3 trillion, economic losses at 3 trillion for this year, for 2020. And that was an estimate of last year. And clearly we were not predicting the impact COVID-19 was going to have on cybercrime. So this is hardly, I mean, these numbers are mind-boggling. So this is hardly the work of a rogue individual working from a basement somewhere. This is organized crime. These are criminals organized according to their specialty. We have, of course, highlighted in red, the programmer, the person or small team, many times, that are writing these malwares. Now, these guys are extremely important because they are responsible for creating software that violates our systems and users. But then there's the distributors, these guys in the middle that are responsible for deploying the malware. It's typically, in an organized crime scenario like this one, it's not the same people. So there are people responsible for deploying malware at different points, like markets like App Store, Play Store, like embedding in free software in browser extensions, downloaders, so on and so forth. Then we've got the money mules, the people that take care of collecting money generated by scams, by theft, people collecting money from ransomware attacks, for example. And of course, we've got the ringleader heading all of this. Technology infrastructure behind all of this is huge. Data centers, their own security tools, distributed attack nodes, etc., etc. Technology behind this criminal infrastructure is huge. But let's look at how malware actually is, for example, distributed. One of the big attack vectors is through pirated or cracked software. In our all around the globe, emerging economies are not the only case. It's not an exception. It's everywhere. cracked software, particularly Windows and Office products. Nothing wrong with Microsoft, it's just that it's just more popular, there's more out there, but people are using this kind of cracked software everywhere. Now, pirated software often comes infected with malware on different types. So if it's not licensed, don't use it. And if you know of someone who's using pirated software, don't use it. Not just because it's wrong, right? It's intellectual property theft and so on and so forth. But from a cybersecurity point of view, it will come infected with malware. Same with freeware, right? This is a second source. In finance, we say no free lunches, right? Well, when it comes to computer software, this is often the case too. These freeware software that's free to use is typically either collecting data like free antivirus or PDF converters. Please do not use free PDF online converters. They're taking all of your info. They're either collecting data, or what's worse, they can actually be sending malware around, distributing malware. And last but not least, something that is somewhat obvious, but I need to say it anyway, is that we need an up-to-date anti-malware, antivirus solution. There are some free antivirus solutions out there, but I wouldn't recommend them. They're either limited in what they stop, or they are collecting your personal data and possibly private data and browsing information. Invest a couple of bucks a year. They're very cheap these days. It's really, really worth it. Now, a word of caution when using online games, which is another way in which these like malwares are getting distributed. Many of us do this. Excuse me. Or allow someone else in your household to do this, and that's fine. I mean, playing online games, there's nothing wrong with this most of the time. But what happens is that some of these online games install the famous plugins in our browsers, and some of these browser plugins could be malicious. But why does it matter if I'm using my personal computer and not the work one to play online games? Why would this pose a risk, not just to me, but also to my organization? Well, the thing is, Chrome synchronizes across devices that use the same account. Plugins are also synchronized, including infected ones. So as a matter of fact, I mean, and what happens is when we synchronize it across devices, whatever we had in our personal device, we log in with our login and information, and we're immediately bringing all of what we had in our personal device into a work device, thus infecting the organization. We actually saw this happening to one of our very, very large industrial customers with presence throughout the Americas, precisely with Chrome. Other browsers are similar. I mean, think about it, they synchronize across. Malicious plugins were synchronized, and the whole organization, the whole region got infected. So what happens, and this is a little bit of a technical eye chart, but it'll make sense in a second. So now that I have an infected computer or even an attacker inside my organization, what happens next? So whenever, whether you have an infected computer, an attacker, or an attacker inside, excuse me, the first thing they're going to do is scan the network quietly. Then, and this is because of network architectures typically in use today, somewhat legacy actually, because we now know that this is not best practice when it comes to security. But most of these network architectures are flat. Most of the cybersecurity we rely on today rests on the firewall, which is on the perimeter. The firewall will not see, the firewall here at the end will not see things that are going on inside. Remember, it is guarding the perimeter. So nothing stops a malware or an attacker from moving around or infecting other devices, including IoT devices like printers, cameras, etc. When the attacker or malware detects a vulnerability in the system or in the systems, they proceed to infect other computers. Threats move laterally or inter VLAN, virtual LAN, so from network to network. The green box here is a switch, and the only thing it does is connect devices, but it doesn't provide any kind of protection. And then, this moves through the different offices, and all of a sudden, my entire infrastructure is infected and being spied on. So, we talked about synchronization between personal and business devices and how this can affect the entire organization. Particularly, as I said, if we have a flat, open architecture that relies on security only on the perimeter, i.e. the firewall. So what about VPNs? I've heard about that before. If I use a VPN to connect into my network, we're all good, right? I mean, it's safe, we're fine, right? Well, wrong. Let's talk about that. The purpose of a VPN, a virtual private network, is to secure the connection channel. And this means that everything you send through this channel, web browsing, consulting internal services of a company, for example, linking, consulting whatever is in a server inside my company, cannot be intercepted by third parties. A VPN is essentially a pipe, a very robust, strong, secure pipe from one point to the other point. So we must remember actually and understand that a VPN is only a means of data passing through it. It's a means of protecting the data passing through it. There are many misunderstandings around VPNs. Number one is that a VPN blocks threats such as viruses and malware. This is false. A VPN is only a channel through which information passes. It's like, as I said, like a pipe from one point to the next. If you're actually putting malware, or you have malware in your laptop or your end device, and you connect through a VPN to your company, your organization, or somewhere else, what you're doing is providing a safe passage for this malware to travel. But there's nothing from stopping it from actually happening. A second statement that is false is that a VPN makes me anonymous, so nobody knows who I am. No, this is false. Using a VPN doesn't mean you are immune to web page trackers. So whatever you are, for example, browsing, stays in your browsing history, and people can see what you are visiting. Number three, and this is actually true, VPN is a channel that protects information from being intercepted. Yes, this is what's true about a VPN. A VPN is an encrypted channel that transfers information that, if intercepted, cannot be viewed or decrypted. So, you might be able to intercept or steal some of that data, but you won't be able to do anything with it because you won't be able to read it. Look, as I said, if you send an infected file or malware through a VPN channel, you are just making sure malware reaches the destination securely. The truth is, we cannot rely on any one piece of technology to keep us completely secure. VPNs, firewalls, these are the typical technology terms that we hear about when we talk anti-malware, antivirus. Most of the times, these are the terms that we typically hear about when we talk about cybersecurity. And that's fine, but the truth is, that's not enough, and not anymore, at least. And this is where a relatively new model comes in, and it's called the zero trust model. Let me talk briefly about what this is. It is a zero trust model is an IT security model that requires strict verification. This is key, of the identity of each person and their device when trying to access resources on a private network, no matter where they are, inside or outside the organization. What this means is that instead of assuming that everything behind a corporate firewall is secure, so everything inside a company, so if you're already in, then you're secure, you're safe, you're fine, you can have access to whatever you want. The zero trust model assumes that an intrusion or breach is happening all the time, and it verifies each request as if it were happening or coming from an open network. So no matter where the request comes from or what resource you're trying to access, zero trust teaches us to never trust, always verify. And yeah, this is a term that should be applied not just to technology, but also to our personal lives and our life to us as people. Never trust, always verify. So in zero trust, each access request is fully authenticated, authorized, and encrypted before granting access. Micro-segmentation principles and less privileged access, so starting from the bottom and then going up in the access value chain, if you will, are applied so as to minimize these lateral movements that I showed with this little funny virus moving around a corporate network. This is a more technical diagram, courtesy of Microsoft. But what it shows is that zero trust is not just about the network architecture. It is about a security posture in the organization, checking every instance all the time. Identities, for example, up here, is it really me? Devices, are they safe? Data, has it been corrupted? Can it be accessed? And so on and so forth. Now, 90%, a quote here from the UK Information Commissioner's Office, 90% of cyber breaches are caused by human error. This, as I said, comes from the UK Information Commissioner's Office, but similar data has been obtained by Kaspersky Labs, KnowBe4, one of the leading training cyber awareness training companies around the globe. Cisco, Fortinet, the Science Institute, they all have similar statistics. What does it mean? Well, it means that no matter how much money we spend on technology, if we don't train our people on what to do and what not to do, we will most certainly be compromised. Cybersecurity awareness is the combination of know and do to protect a company's information assets. When a company's employees and stakeholders in general are aware of cybersecurity, it means that they understand what cyber threats are, the potential impacts of a cyber attack, and what the impact it will have on the business, and the steps needed to reduce the risk and prevent cyber crime from actually infiltrating the workspace. We've seen this. Malware has flourished. It is becoming increasingly sophisticated. And one of the most commonly used ways to deploy it is social engineering. So creating a culture around awareness of cybersecurity in the workspace, it doesn't mean that I will completely eradicate the risk of data theft or cybercrime, but it will surely help. Remember this statistic here, 90% of cyber breaches are caused by human error. Okay? So, in conclusion, on this section, how do I configure a secure working environment for remote work? Well, don't use pirated software and source of malware. It's in there, you will get infected. Use a good antivirus of anti-malware software. If you can afford one, go and get one. If not, choose a free one, but pick a good one, a solid one. Use a VPN. A VPN will not protect you from malware or virus or phishing attempts, but it will protect the traffic going from one device into your network. So it's a secure pipe. Use two-factor authentication. We didn't talk about this, but it's about, it's what now financial institutions and many software vendors are offering now, and even websites when you authenticate. It's not just about the password anymore. It's about the password and Face ID, the finger, touch ID, the physical bank token. I have one here with me, for example, right? A physical token. That is a double, two-factor or multiple-factor authentication. Constantly update your operating system. Needless to say, it has to be patched. It has to be the latest one. Use devices only for business purposes. Remember what we said about synchronization. If you use it for both personal and business, you have to be very careful. Things get synchronized as well. Never install software that is coming from unverified origin if you don't know the reputation. Do back up your information periodically. And last but not least, build a strong cyber awareness culture. Remember that statistic that I showed you. 90% of cyber breaches are due to people clicking on the wrong link or providing the wrong sort of information. So let's talk about our customers. Let's talk about the individuals. How do we protect ourselves? How do we help protect our remote customers, our the individuals out there? Look, I think we all agree that we've been working on a digitally transforming, on trying to digitally transform rather the financial services industry for a few years now. Back in 2015, that seems like ages ago now, a study by Cisco on the IMD of Switzerland, that's called the Digital Vortex. If you have a chance to pick it up, do so. It's really interesting. The Digital Vortex placed financial services industry, FSI, inside the top 5 industries that were going to be more disrupted by digitization. This study has since been updated, and latest version is 2019. And FSI remains at the top, remains top 5, so actually number 4, I think. Now, the nature of microfinances, however, meant that full automation and full digitalization of processes was hard and is hard, right? Particularly those that were customer facing. There is a real need for a person, a financial advisor, to be out in the field talking to customers and micro borrowers who are often in remote and technology thin, for lack of a better term, areas. Now, COVID-19 came and changed all of this. What years of consulting work or the most forward-thinking management and credit teams could not do, the coronavirus did practically overnight. Digital transformation has been forced on us. I mean, let's face it. Social distancing now means finding ways to do our work without the physical contact. If you look at the graph on the slide that I'm showing here, we see the ways in which we've been trying to digitize distribution channels. Mainly to gain operational efficiencies, of course, and to increase customer satisfaction, right? Of course. I mean, we all seek that. We all look for that. This was and still is surely the right thing to do, but it was taking long to achieve. COVID-19 has accelerated this by driving what has become to be known as the new normal. Accelerated digitalization, product of this pandemic, has altered the digital travel patterns. So how digital traffic moves around the globe. Online normal behavior patterns are no longer valid. This actually makes it very difficult for anybody to detect fraud. Scammers continue to become more sophisticated, launching complex attacks that use both advanced and human/bot technology, so little robots, little programs that do the work automatically, essentially. Many of these attackers are using higher level of digital traffic. Are taking advantage of this higher level of traffic in the digital realm to more effectively mix what's good traffic with attacks and carry out undetected attacks. For businesses, this means that the level of surveillance needed to successfully identify and essentially try to stop fraud is higher than ever. For people, it means that we are at higher risk of being robbed. Now, this is a trend that we've seen this year, and it continues to happen. Top countries, and this is what the map shows, of origin for fraud attacks are shifting towards well-established economies. This is a bit different from traditional fraud hubs that are typically seen in developing economies, like our economies. If you think about it, this time last year, the Philippines, for example, topped the charts of an attack origination, but it doesn't even appear in the top 10 in this year, in Q3, Q4 now, towards the end of 2020. A likely driver of this is financial hardship. COVID-19 related economic turmoil continues to hit most of the world, and people are more willing to turn to fraud to make ends meet, unfortunately. So this, together with the fact that we're more interconnected and interconnection around the globe is more efficient, it does create a global fraud ecosystem. Fraudsters can quickly mobilize to take advantage of changing socioeconomic circumstances to recruit new participants and scale up attacks in developed economies in many ways with better connectivities and more resources. Now, the map we just saw showed a digital fraud across all industries, but financial services are, of course, also seeing how the economic turmoil of 2020 drives financial fraud. For example, in a desperate attempt to access credit, financially challenged consumers might be willing to misrepresent income levels. Now, most of the attacks on the financial services realm are on the pay stage. You can see this 70% attack on payments. As more people adopted digital payments during the pandemic, scammers have focused on these points of contact. I mean, consumers expect these payments to be instantaneous, and scammers in turn seek to hijack these payments in real time before actually they reach the end, and parties like customer/entity, the receiving entity, realize it. This is interesting here. 22% of the attacks came from mobile channels. It might seem small if you think about the trend towards mobile first, but it does represent an increase, a big increase in mobile attacks since the previous year, since 2019. We're about 15% in the previous year. So mobile first is also driving the fact that fraud is coming really more from mobile devices. According to a recent study conducted by Appgate and the Information Security Media Group, ISMG, this year, security professionals working in financial services are becoming more and more concerned about multiple areas of where they feel there is growing vulnerability. This study shows, and I'm going to summarize this chart for you, that in essence, fraud schemes are evolving too fast to keep up. This is the top one. I mean, things are happening. Fraud is evolving so fast that companies, security professionals are finding it very difficult to keep up. Second, conclusion is that customers and partners lack sufficient awareness to protect themselves from socially designed fraud schemes. Again, social engineering. What we're talking about, the weakest link being people. Awareness is lacking. And third, scammers have too much valid customer information at their fingertips. So there's too much information, personal information available, and they can therefore move around too easily to control and prevent, to control what people do online and what people can do. So there's a lot that they can have access to, these fraudsters and scammers, to take control of originating accounts. About 60% of security professionals and now, if you look at the graph, 60% are concerned about fraud schemes evolving too fast. This was about 40% last year. 57%, so close to 60%, are now concerned here about the lack of knowledge of social engineering schemes. That was up from 42% last year. And no area actually has seen a decrease compared to previous year. So what do we see here? Well, there's a clear concern for people being tricked into giving away access, giving away information, giving about personal data. This is what we call social engineering. And there's various types of social engineering. Phishing, spear phishing, vishing, smishing, there's others, whaling. These are the top four, if you will. Let's start with phishing. It's the most common type of social engineering attack. The attacker essentially recreates a recognized company website or support portal, for example, and sends the link via emails or social media. This is a blanket attack. This is a mass attack. It's not necessarily targeted. It's just out there. So the attack person, or whoever receives the email, ends up committing their personal information and even, in this case, credit card details, because they believe that they're reaching the right website for the bank, for the financial institution, for the vendor, technology vendor support website. So, conclusion, it's easier said than done, but emails that come from unreliable sources or that are suspicious should not be opened. Yeah, of course, easier, as I said, easier said than done. Phishing is on the rise, 600% up this year compared to last year. Spear phishing. It's a phishing-like attack, but it requires additional effort in part of the attackers because it's a very, very targeted attack. There's a lot of customization so that when it reaches a target, it really does seem like a genuine email that something that was created specifically for the receiving person. Chances of users falling with fake emails coming from spear phishing are considerably, extremely high. Vishing is another type of social engineering attack where phishing is essentially voice phishing. Attackers can be anywhere on the internet, but many prefer the old-style phone call. This attack sometimes creates, for example, a company's IVR system, the interactive voice response, where you say, for English, press 1, and then you start pressing and enter your password, enter your key, whatever, enter your ID number. Attackers attach a toll-free number, and they trick people into calling the phone number and entering their details. It's easy to trick somebody like this. Wouldn't you agree? I think most people don't think twice before entering sensitive information into a supposedly reliable IVR system, or do they? I mean, vishing, so voice phishing is on the rise. We need to be aware of that. And finally, smishing, SMS phishing, just as phone calls are a way to trick people into submitting their information. So are text messages or messages by, what's very popular now, WhatsApp, the text messaging application. This threat occurs when users receive a text message and, imposing or posing to be rather some important entity such as a bank. The message usually prompts the user to click on a link or to call a number, and the number or the link belongs to cyber criminals. So but why is this mission on the rise? Because we've got everything now on the palm of our hands, mobile first, right? I mean, yeah, we've got our email, but if we get a text message, it's immediate. If we receive a text message from a bank with a link saying, update your information here, we click on it. So once again, are people the weakest link? Well, yeah, unfortunately, we are. I think the difference here is that when it comes to customers, so no, we're not talking about, remember, we're talking about best practice with our consumers, with our end customers, with people. When it comes to customers and reducing the risk of suffering a cyber breach and fraud, is that this people aspect is pretty much the only thing we as financial services institutions can have an influence on. You see, cybersecurity and keeping a robust security posture is about having three things, right? The right technology, of course. I mean, cyber technology, digital transformation, digital technology, it is about having the right technology. But it's also about following the right set of processes. So doing the things that we're supposed to do, following the processes and procedures that will have the greatest impact. But the third thing, and probably the most important one, is technology being the first one, processes the second one, and third is having a cyber resilient culture, i.e., the person and the set of behaviors that we exhibit, the things that we do and the things we don't do. We can't do much about the equipment and the mobile devices people use, nor the processes they follow, not really. But what we can do is generate awareness of the risks that are out there. And here's that word again, risk. So let me leave you with a final thought, a sort of conclusion, if you will, for the section on best practices for remote customers, but really a conclusion that applies to cybersecurity in the digitizing world, particularly in times of COVID-19. Cybercrime is a risk that is growing. It is definitely here to stay. If you want to minimize losses in our industry, we can start by teaching people, making people conscious of ways to identify and mitigate the risk of suffering a breach, of suffering a cyber breach. So thank you. That concludes my presentation. Now I think we've been receiving questions on the chat window and the Q&A section, and now I will open it up to more questions. So thank you. Let me stop there by saying thank you very much for being with us this morning, this evening, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. I think the topic of cybersecurity, especially now these times of cyber resilience that is needed more and more, with people getting more digitized and interconnected, being thrown into working remotely by the grip of this COVID-19 pandemic that we're living globally these days. I think it's a very critical aspect to take into consideration. We will be sending around, as I said, the slides, and I will, let me just look at the Q&A section for a second. Chat window, please bear with me a second. Q&A, there we go. Okay, there's a question here that says, how do these risks impact the digital transformation process of a microfinance institution? Please provide examples of digital solutions subject to these kinds of risks and mitigators that we could use. So let me break that question down into into two. I don't know if you can see it now if I'm projecting the Q&A. I am projecting the Q&A, but how do these, like cyber risks, let me break that into two pieces. How do these risks impact the digital transformation process of a microfinance institution? Well, digital transformation in a microfinance institution has been happening slowly, but surely, and it's been happening, as I mentioned, mainly to drive operational efficiencies and enhance the customer experience. And that is, essentially what we were looking for, and it's still the case. Now, it was moving slowly because of the need in microfinance to have this personal touch with our customers, people seeking microfinance. The pandemic and social distancing rather, that has been driven by it, has made us really pushed us into having to find ways in which to cater to our customers, attend to our customers without being physically next to them. So in a way, the COVID-19 pandemic has actually pushed digital transformation forward like nothing had done before. So it's really been like a wrecking ball hitting us in the face and say, look, I mean, you were thinking about transforming digitally, you've been postponing it or moving slowly. Now is the time. Now you have to do it. You do it or you die. Yeah, as I said, the more you digitize and the more you interconnect, unfortunately, it means that the larger your attack surface becomes. So yeah, when transforming digitally in microfinance institutions and in any sort of institution in any industry means that you are now injecting a new type of operational risk into the mix. And this risk is cyber risk, the risk of receiving a cyber attack and being breached and losing information. Now, what we can do to become more cyber resilient is, of course, make sure that we're, as I said, I gave a few examples, make sure you're using a very robust antivirus of anti-malware software, that your software is up to date, that you're not downloading dubious material from the internet, that you're not using cracked or pirated software. All of those things from a technology point of view, that your organization has robust perimeter defenses like a strong firewall, that you're using a zero trust methodology, meaning that you're checking everything all the time for intrusions, that you're really not taking anything for granted and you're checking people's and devices' identities all the time. So that's the way to prevent it from a technology point of view. Then, of course, there's a process part. As I said, this is a three-pronged approach. Technology is one of them. It's important, but not the only one. Then you've got the processes, making sure that whatever you do and however you do things follows some robust processes. And there are multiple ways in which you can adapt to having a cyber resilient security posture. One of them is the ISO 27000, very well known, but also closed in a way. Then you can there's the NIST from the US National Institute of Science and Technology, that gives you a set of guidelines to follow, and there's a NIST cybersecurity framework that gives you guidelines to follow when it comes to processes and procedures of how to become and be cyber resilient. But the third, and in my opinion, one in which we have more control and one in which we can have greater impact to mitigate this risk, and as a matter of fact, one in which the greatest number of breaches that have been detected, are the people. I mean, teaching people, making people conscious of what these new cyber risks are. If we help people understand that really they can either be the weakest link or the strongest link in the organization, I think we'll probably go the longest way. So long answer to a not a short question, but a rather important question. So I wanted to spend some time on it. There are risks that come with digitization. Microfinance is institutions are definitely open to it, will be victims of cyber attacks, but we need to make sure that we stay resilient, because there's no way, we cannot turn our backs to digital transformation and to change. There's a note here that says throughout the pandemic, we provided VPN to most of our customers, including providers. Fantastic. I mean, that VPNs are really a way in which we can keep our communications secure. We provide a secure channel, an encrypted channel, end to end, so that whatever we're sending cannot be intercepted and cannot be stolen, essentially. I mean, data information is our most valuable asset. I mean, people call it the new oil. I won't go into those cliches, but it really is. I mean, the information that we transfer from one device to the other is critical. It's the most valuable thing. So we need to protect it. But remember, a VPN is a secure channel, a pipe that secures information and data going from one place to the next. But it doesn't mean that whatever you're sending from one place to the next is actually safe content. You could be sending a malware securely from one place to the next. Now, how do we guarantee we'll not get the issues from their side, from the other side? This is a follow-up comment from Fadi, and it's regarding the VPN, right? I mean, how do we know? We provide VPNs, but how do we know that the people on the other end are being safe and secure? The truth is we don't, and that's what makes it very complex, because we can secure our own environment, internal environment, and set up the most robust cybersecurity controls and technology and training, making a very strong cyber culture inside of our organization. But we don't control the supply chain. We don't support. We don't control our vendors, our partners. What do we do about that? Well, a couple of things. First, and something that we can do from within. Again, think about zero trust methodology, zero trust. Implement the what I talked about, the zero trust. So nothing that comes from outside, or even nothing that is inside my network, my organization, is trusted. I need to validate it every single time. That is the only way in which you will be able to block, if you will, lateral movements of things that come into your network through infected end devices through a VPN. So zero trust to stop lateral movement. And the second thing is work with your value chain, work with your supply chain, rather not the value chain, work with your supply chain, sorry. Work with the vendors that attend to you, work with your suppliers, work with them and help them understand the things that we are talking about now. Help them understand about cybersecurity risk and why this risk is now also, so their risk is now your risk and your risk is their risk. Everything is connected, you see? So I think that by helping or trying to induce your supply chain of becoming more cyber resilient, you will be impacting in a positive way your own cyber risk. Let me see if you have any more questions. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. Let me look at the chat window. Sometimes it comes through there. Look, I don't have any more questions. We have a small poll that we would like you to answer, please. 3 short questions, and I would like to mention that we have and the poll is now up there. So if you can please take 1 minute to reply to this poll, it will help us and it will help you. We will distribute the results. We want to understand what's what's happening with you, what's happening in your organizations, what's happening in your countries. Please, I want to stress something that I mentioned at the beginning, but I want to stress and double underline it. We have a period of consulting, if you will, that it's open to all of you. So until the end of January, January 31st. So any doubts, any information that you may want to see, anything that you may want us to stress upon or clarify from what we've talked about today, please do reach out to us for questions. We have until the end of January with us. And you know, even after that, if you want to send us an email, of course, more than welcome. But use this period of time that we're working on with Triple Jump to answer any of the questions you may have on cybersecurity. We talked about cybersecurity on the workspace. We talked about cybersecurity for end customers, and we talked about cyber risk and ways to mitigate it. Anything that's within that realm, please do reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. So let's give us a couple more minutes to answer the poll. I have a question here. It's an interesting question and a good one on the chat window that I'll answer while you guys are answering the poll. It says I had to download a Chrome add-in to join this meeting, and yes, you had probably if you hadn't done that before. How do I know that it's not infected somewhere in some way? And should I have done anything before just pressing the button to load it? Well, great question. I think number one, you should only download plugins and anything really from reputable sources. Nothing that, for example, this plugin that you downloaded today on Chrome or other browser that you may be using came from Cisco Systems. It's a WebEx system. It's a reputable company. It has all the right set of certificates, so that should be all right. I mean, you should be safe to download them. And the other thing that you need to make sure is that you have a good anti-malware, antivirus solution will most likely be able to catch any of these plugins that are maliciously trying to infect your computer. So yeah, those two things. But the main one is only download things from reputable sources. Last question here I have, are password vaults secure? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. If you use the Chrome, for example, password vault, or the one that the keychain, Apple's keychain, or NordVPNs, and there are a number of commercially available password vaults that are secure. What they do is they keep your password hashes encrypted. What happens is that once you put your password, you keep your passwords in a vault. What they keep and what they transfer from one place to the other is the hash of the password. So not necessarily the password itself. So if people do ever gain access to that communication or that vault, they won't be able to decipher what the actual password was, not just because it was encrypted, but also because the hash itself was encrypted. So yeah, I mean, if you use again, reputable source, I think is key here. If you use a password vault from one of these sources, it should be fine. Okay, I think we're good. We are 20, almost 20 past the hour. I want to thank you very much for your presence with us here. Just stop sharing my presentation. I want to thank you for your presence this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you are. This is a topic that as you probably can tell, I enjoy very much, and we're here to help. So any questions that you may have, any anything that you would like us to look into for you, with you, we're here for you. We're here for you until the at least the end of January with Triple Jump. So reach out to us and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day or your evening. And we'll be sending the recording and the slides to everyone for you to review, or for those who could not participate today for to listen at their own in their own time. Thank you and goodbye.